Hey there, folks. Before we begin, I would really appreciate it if you'd be willing to go search up the BIPOC Streamer Awards and cast your vote for the Chatterbox Award for the Winging It podcast, because we're up for it for this year, and we'd really like to potentially win that. So if you could do us a favor, head over there and make that vote for us, that would be highly appreciated. On with the discussion. Hey there, everybody. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I just really wanted to quickly talk about the Switch Successor leaks because we don't know the specific name of the device yet, even though everybody's running with Switch 2. It is understandable why they would say Switch 2, because if we're expecting the same form factor or a very similar form factor, I get it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to be called specifically. I do think Switch is going to be a part of the name so that they don't have to rebrand NSO, but it just might not be named Switch 2. So several leaks have come out, and I'm not like the biggest person to jump on top of leaks, but going by what I've read over, and funnily enough, if anybody's listened to my recent videos about stuff I'd be interested in happening with the next platform, or the live stream where I talked about it, you read over those specs and you read over the speculation about what is going to happen with the console and what people are saying they are leaking. A lot of it sounds similar to what I already talked about. Now, if this stuff is true, then that would mean that the majority of what I said about the coming platform would be on point. That would mean the majority of the stuff that I've already talked about, wanting to see and would like them to be able to do, would be on point. So anyone who follows me, and even if you don't follow me, if you're on YouTube, look up anything on my page. Like, I know two were within the last month. And I think I have a video back from either October or November, if you scroll through my videos. Listen to those discussions and look at the Switch 2 rumors. And tell me you don't see similarities. Tell me you don't. But besides hyping my own ego, the leaks are interesting. And I couldn't help myself. I looked. I looked. Normally I wouldn't. But this time around I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me see. And again, the leaks sound like the stuff I've already said. The stuff I already said I would like. So it's like either one, I think along the same lines as Nintendo does, or somebody's been listening to my stuff and taking everything I say into account. I don't think it's the latter, because that would require a lot of time to implement. And all this stuff is coming out within months, maybe a year or two of me saying this stuff. And they probably would have had all this stuff planned out by then and already been working on it. So it wouldn't make sense for it to be that they were listening to me and running with what I said. Now, I know a lot of other YouTubers would be like, oh yeah, they heard me. They knew what I was talking about. Yeah, Nintendo know better. I'm a little bit more humble than that. A little bit more. Now, I mean, Street Fighter 6 damn near robbed me of most of my ideas. But I mean, that's not necessarily true. But I did talk about what Street Fighter 6 could be like 4 years before the game launched. And then technically 2 years or a year and a half before an announcement with Jay, when I did the podcast with Jay. So software is a little bit more malleable. Hardware, not so much. But there's one that really sticks out to me, and it's because the assumption that goes with the code name of the item, and that's the G.I.G. Oh, now for those who didn't know, the code name for Breath of the Wild was G.I.G. That's because it was coming out on the Wii U. And the code name for Tears of the Kingdom is EX or X King. Now, G.I.G. O, a lot of people are inferring that O means Omake, which is O-M-A-K-E. I hope I pronounced it correctly. I know Japanese phonetics generally well, but sometimes I get mixed up. But it would be Omake. Omake means extra. So a lot of people going with the inference that Omake meaning extra would mean deluxe, meaning remaking and re-releasing Breath of the Wild for the next platform. And in my mind, that's one route you could go. But there's another. If the next platform is going to be DLSS certified, meaning it's going to potentially be utilizing DLSS 2 and utilizing DLSS 3.5 potentially, Omake could, meaning extra, could also mean enhanced. I've talked about this several times before, and it seems like people can't wrap their brains around the concept that you have to program DLSS to do what it does. You have to program DLSS for each individual game. It just doesn't do it right out the box. It doesn't do all that on its own. You have to tell it what to do and what to look for. So, G.I.G. Omake could mean an enhancement for Breath of the Wild, and by extension from that, Tears of the Kingdom with DLSS. You know, something that will allow the games to not have slowdown and intense action moments. Even though the slowdown doesn't really mess with your inputs, you do visually see it on screen. And DLSS could be used to help with that. Because if you drop the resolution internally and then blow it up and use computer machine learning to enhance the visuals, you can take away the slowdown because not as much information is being fed through it. And it's like that. The first thing everybody runs to, oh yeah, we getting Breath of the Wild Deluxe. Yeah, yes sir. And it's being reported by so many different social media sites and stuff like that. And I'm like, but did y'all not think about the other way that this works? Everybody's talking about how they want to see Nintendo Switch games get enhancements. DLSS is an easy way to do that without diving deeply into the game's code. DLSS is another layer that sits on top of it. So that's why I'm like, you talk about wanting enhancements for these games, but then you talk about wanting the game completely remade. But there's a whole other path sitting right in front of your face that everyone is ignoring. That's why I was like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just Breath of the Wild. I mean, it could also mean a new game that's utilizing the same engine. We don't know for sure. My thoughts is that they're working on enhancements. If we're utilizing DLSS, they're working on enhancements for certain Switch games. More than likely, they're more popular ones, the ones that have sold skyrocketing into the millions, so that they don't have to resell those same games. It was understandable from Wii U to Switch because the internal makeup of both of those machines are completely different. But if you are still using the same family line SoC for NVIDIA for the next platform, it doesn't make much sense to go ahead and completely remake it when you already have it available, if you can just add enhancements to it that work with what you already have. Everybody's running around this rumored. No, Nintendo said the next platform is going to be utilizing the same system, the same account system, and basically the same OS. So why is it so difficult for people to understand the next machine is going to be backwards compatible? And hey, if it's backwards compatible and it has DLSS on it, we can use DLSS to enhance the games from the Switch on the newer platform. The logic tracks, at least my logic tracks. I don't know where everybody else's logic is, but my logic tracks. And I'm just like, y'all can't fathom that for some reason. The weird thing is, people talked about these games getting enhancements for the next platform. That's why I'm like so lost on this. They talked about how you want the next platform to be able to enhance games, and so many people on social media run with that idea. But then you want them to remake one of the biggest, and I mean biggest isn't world size, biggest games they have ever made, to re-release it again? Instead of Nintendo just going ahead and working with Nvidia and finding ways to have DLSS enhance the game when you play with it at home online, because it requires an online connection to use DLSS. So you want them to do all that, remake the game from the ground up, which takes a shit ton of time, mind you, versus using DLSS as an additional layer that can enhance the game without having to dive as deeply into the code of it. Am I the only one thinking logically here? Like, hey, Nintendo could update the eShop literally and say, this game is blank console enhanced with DLSS. All they have to do is throw a label on the eShop after making the fixes at that point. And no, it is not the same as what has to be done with emulation to change a game to work. With emulation, you actually have to change the code of the game to work with an emulator that way. DLSS, it's a layer on top. At least from my understanding, it's a layer on top. It doesn't work with every game, obviously, but it's a layer that sits on top that allows you to drop the resolution of something and enhance the resolution with machine learning. So I know I shouldn't be the only one that understands this concept. But aside from that, there's also talk about it having 250 gigabytes of onboard storage. Now, knowing Nintendo, if they're doing that, they're more than likely soldering it to the board. But Geronimo recently put me on to something about I think it was SD. It was SD extra or enhanced or something like that, where you have SD being read at similar speeds to SSD. I don't think it's exact, but it's much faster than what we currently have with SDUX, I want to say. Or is it SDUX that's the one that would have the... I looked at the article like maybe 4 days ago, so I don't remember exactly what it says. But if there is an enhanced version of SD available, which Nintendo would have known about because I think at this point it's about 4 years old, it wouldn't matter if they had the memory soldered to the board anyway, because you'd be able to swap out your SD. And with the newer version of SD, you could have up to, I think, what was it, about 1,000 terabytes. of storage with high read speeds. So I don't think it would matter much if they did put an SSD in there, or they stuck with flash memory and soldered it to the board. It wouldn't make much of a difference, because you'd still be able to use the SDXC cards you have now. Yeah, it would be SDUC would be the next one, because SDXC is the current that is in the Switch. So SDUC would be the new format that would be available. And you could use that as your way to expand storage, but still utilize from SDXC upwards. So yeah. So before people get in their heads about how that storage is not going to work, remember, Nintendo knows compression. So for them, it does work. Indies aren't going to be much of a problem. The only ones that are going to suffer in that regard are going to be third parties. But if you can expand your memory utilizing micro SD cards that expand up to thousands of terabytes of memory, that's also not memory of storage, that's also not going to make much of a difference. Just depends on how you're using it. And again, with DLSS being there to enhance things for a lot of games, I don't see it being much of a problem. Going forward, I don't see it being much of a problem. So, I mean, it could work itself out. And with the feature set that is being pretty much accepted for the next platform, that would be cool. Now, there is the one swirling rumor about the magnetic Joy-Cons. I'm still not on board with that thought process. Because if this little machine runs hot, you're going to have some issues with it demagnetizing the Joy-Cons. Now, what I would expect, if they're going to use magnets, that it still physically hooks in. Like, maybe the magnets are just an added layer of security to make sure it stays intact. But if you're just magnets, you're running too much risk. There's too many chances that somebody could bump into you and knock your next console out your hands and drop it to the ground and break it. And if we're looking at anywhere, the price range looking anywhere from $300 to $400, I don't see them taking that risk of it just being magnets. Some magnets can be very strong, but those are expensive magnets. If Nintendo's going to be doing this with any sort of magnets involved, they are likely not going to be using the expensive, super strong magnets. On top of that, those could potentially ruin any of the internal components if they were doing that. But some pretty decent, cheap magnets that would hold pretty tight together, along with a physical connection, that makes sense to me. Like hooking it in like the Joy-Cons currently do, but also having small magnets that can help hold that bind together. Yeah, that makes sense to me. But I don't know. I'm still not on board with that idea. It could be completely true. I'm just not on board with that idea myself. Because just logically speaking, there are too many scenarios where that thing could be broken. And that's what my thought process is. Like, if you're trying to prevent stuff from being broken, then don't make sense. But I mean, there's also a bunch of other stuff to talk about with that. But more than likely, we'll probably talk about it on the podcast Sunday. So I don't want to steal too much of that away. And on top of that, I still want to do more reading and checking out things. That's why I didn't really talk about the specs. But I do want to do more reading on what potentially is sitting out there. But other than that, thank you guys very much for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out, everybody. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. If you would be interested in supporting my efforts in content creation, please head on over to Amazon and look up The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search, and you will find both Volume 1 and Volume 2 up for sale. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to be able to create more content for you in the future. Peace out.